Welcome to the next episode of the CEO Next Door. We are glad you joined us today. Our focus on this wonderful podcast is on founder stories. I'm joined by my co-host Donovan Morrison and our esteemed guest, Paul Barron. He is the founder and CEO of The Wall Printer. I am very excited to find out more about this business. So why don't we start it off by handing it over to Paul. Paul, if you could tell us about yourself and tell us what the Wall Printer is and how you guys are doing.
Thanks, Mike and Donovan. Nice to be here with you and your audience today. Feel free to jump in and redirect me at any point. I'm not going to bore your audience with Paul was born at a very young age and take you back that far in my 70-year journey. But suffice to say that since your audience may have some interest in the entrepreneurial path I've taken, I'll start briefly at the college years, which formed pretty much the rest of my journey. I put myself through college stringing tennis rackets for the tennis team. I'm an avid competitive tennis player. I made some money doing that to supplement what my parents were kind enough to give me to get through college. And I liked it to the extent that following graduation, I opened up a little sporting goods store in the college town where I went to school and graduated. However, I did become a math teacher, which was my avocation, and that's what I had wanted to do and what I chose to do as a career path. And I might very well be teaching to this day, some 60 years later, should it not have been sidetracked by the various forces that pulled at me. One of which was I enjoyed teaching. I enjoyed the students. I didn't like the administration. I didn't like some of the rules and regulations that the schools had to categorize what teachers could do and could not do with their students. With that said, I found myself, as I often have over the years, bucking the system, so to speak. And parallel to that, I did start my tennis shop, which was gaining ground and becoming successful to the point that we opened up a second and a third shop in the area of Hudson Valley, New York, and around New Paltz, New York. And they became fairly successful. I was given an option in my third year of teaching of continuing on the tenure track that I was on because I was a fairly good teacher, but they knew that I had outside interest. And they asked me to make a choice between the retail direction I was going with my business and with my responsibilities to teaching. So I made the decision to leave teaching and to go on the entrepreneurial route that I had started 2 years prior. And fast forward a couple of years, I sold my interest in my tennis shops to my partner that I had, which also is a thread that's common throughout my career, and that is partnerships, relationships. One of the things that you should always learn early on, in my opinion, is what hats you like to wear and what hats you don't like to wear. I found that the sales, marketing, customer interaction, identifying high value customers, products, vendors, strategic relationships, that was something I was fairly adept at, and I enjoyed that. I didn't enjoy managing people as my businesses grew and we were hiring people. And in subsequent entrepreneurial ventures that I started, like a restaurant where we had over 100 employees, those were the roles that I did not really enjoy. I didn't really enjoy the accounting. I didn't really enjoy the legal aspects. Everything that I focused on was really customer related or vendor related. And so anything that would help grow the market that we had. And I started restaurants. I started and sold my tennis retail shops. I went to work in between a lot of these ventures with other companies so that I could understand the resources that some larger corporations offered. So I took sales and marketing and business development roles in some large corporations to be able to gain other insight into how these companies grew and to how these various departments interacted with one another. And again, confirming the hats I like to wear and the ones I didn't like to wear. I started a software company I guess this was the late 80s after exiting out of my restaurant. the restaurant that I had in New York was a very successful venture. I'm proud to say it's still open after being founded in 1979. So 21, 31, 41, 43 years later, it's still open. Very proud of that. Same menu that we created for that business when we founded it in 79. It's gone through 2 or 3 owners over the years, but still it's retained its character that we developed in that. I took that experience from 79 to 91 when I exited, and I moved to Florida from New York, mainly to play more tennis and to be near my parents that had relocated from New York in retirement to Florida, and to be near them as they were getting on in years. And I opened up another restaurant to basically copy the one that I had succeeded in forming in New York. Well, what turned out to be a 12-year success in New York turned out to be a 1-year failure in Florida. Although I don't like to use the word failure, it was a learning experience. The money that I made in New York in 12 years, I quickly lost in 1 year in Florida in that adventure. Again, I say that with the experience that, it's not how many times that you fall down. As the saying goes, it's how many times you get up. And so I learned from that. I moved on. I went back to my math roots, and basically went back to a software development company that I had founded that solved a certain problem that Florida was having with its telemarketing laws and telemarketing companies. Went back to those roots. Fast forward through a couple of years, I became known as a communications consultant to some companies, and I ended up being hired by a Russian company which made wonderful communications, GPS, navigation system, audio, video technologies. Some of the video that we're using today based on some of the software that they developed back in the 80s and 90s. And if you ever had a Skype call or any kind of a video call, or you were tracked down, as you see in the CSI crime shows, because of the GPS chip in your telephones, those were all this technology that was licensed by me to companies like Samsung and Microsoft and Apple. Every music clip that you hear on an Apple device, whether it be an iPod, iPad, iPhone, that MP3 clip was this technology that I licensed to Apple. So it was a very successful journey of about 13 years licensing technologies for the Russian company until I pretty much saturated their audiences here in the US, and then actually helped them exit some of these divisions by finding strategic partnerships for them that could take those business groups and escalate it here in the United States. But what I did find is that I had a very good way of communicating on behalf of a foreign entity to find its US targets and markets. And so I went through a string of companies and products and services that included a baby bottle manufacturer in Austria, a Chinese headband headphone manufacturer, a self-service dog wash from Australia, a media board from Israel, all of which trying to take these companies to market in the United States to help them identify their high-value customers, vendors, partners, strategic relationships. It was always as a hired gun. Over the years, I've retired several times, vowing never to do it again, because I didn't have the control that I always liked and enjoyed when I owned my own companies. Again, something for your audience to keep in mind, not only the hats you like to wear, but also the responsibilities you're willing to take and willing to put off on somebody else. Somebody said, it frequently comes up, what's the definition of a really good leader or a good CEO? In my opinion, a great CEO is one who's smart enough to hire the best qualified people to do the jobs that are needed, but wise enough to back off and just let them do it. Sure. And so I found which hats I like to wear. I hired good people. I've been fortunate in that regard over the years. And so I was able to do what I enjoyed doing, which was those sales and marketing roles. But again, all those brief descriptions I put out there for you for the company's products I represented was as a hired gun. And I retired in 2000 and I guess 17, 18, but I'm always looking at something. And a company out of Germany who had a distributor in Canada for a vertical printing machine reached out to me in 2018, and they asked me to represent them to help them launch and market this vertical printing machine they had, which was basically an inkjet printer that printed digital images onto wall surfaces. vertical printing. And I found it a fascinating machine. I think of myself as a capitalist, very much like anybody else, meaning that if I, and an ultimate consumer, if I see something and I like it and I can afford it and it solves a problem, again, something for your audience to note. If what you think is a great idea or you find something that's really interesting and innovative, that may be, but if it doesn't solve a problem for somebody, probably worth passing on. But if it does solve a problem and it's something that you can see a market for, it might be worth pursuing, whether that be an idea that you're actually creating, whether it be a product or service, or that you have somebody else's product or service that you want to escalate and find out just how big it can grow, which is the areas that I really like to pursue. So our conversations broke down because they wanted me to be a hired gun, just like all those other situations that I described to you earlier. And so I passed on it. But I did love the machine and the concept, and I had never seen anything like it before. So I decided to do my due diligence and kick the tires, so to speak, and find out, well, who else is doing this? Why haven't I heard of this? Or why haven't I seen this product before? First thing I do is I usually yell out of my home office to my wife somewhere in the house, and I say, hey, Maureen, come take a look at this. Invariably, what she does, though, is she cuts up my credit cards and hides my bank account from me because she goes, here we go, Paul's going to invest in something crazy. And so this time she did take a look, and she was all in, just as I was, once we learned more about it. And what I mean by learning more about it, we learned that there was a handful, literally 5 companies in the world that manufactured a vertical printing machine. There was the one German product that approached me. There were 2 in China, 1 in Australia, 1 in India. None of them broached the pond, so to speak, coming across the Atlantic or the Pacific to set up shop in the United States, North or South America. The German company did find and identify a Canadian company to buy their product and represent them. They're the ones who approached me. And I, in turn, looked at all these other products to see, well, what's the advantages, disadvantages, what's it all about, basically. I eliminated them all for one reason or another, including the German product. No disrespect to anybody in your audience who might have German heritage. I drive a BMW. I value a very well-engineered product. I cook with Henkel knives. These are great products that I believe have the value associated with their purchase price. The German product, however, had a price tag starting at about $45,000, and it had features that were much less functional than the product that I eventually identified as being the best of breed of the product of the 5 companies that were out there. It was a Chinese company that was actually the oldest one in the business. They had about 10 patents on the products. We developed a relationship. I have a company that represents me that actually goes to places that I don't want to travel to. China was one of those on the places I did not want to travel to. My opinion of that has changed. Maybe after this post-COVID era that we might get through one day, I will go and visit these people who are absolutely wonderful. We've developed over the course of 3 years now a beautiful relationship between us, where not only do I co-own patents, which is very unusual for an American company to co-own patents with the Chinese, but I have created some feature enhancements to the product in the years that I've been with them. I own exclusively all of North and South America and the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, where I sell and service and support these machines. We've enhanced them with some electric and computer components that are better supported by American-made products. I manufacture our own inks. We have 2 factories in Kansas and in Florida that manufacture inks for these printers. Very important to introduce the right inks into a printer. I learned that the hard way. There's really a reason why Hewlett-Packard and Brother and Epson and Canon want you to buy their inks from them, because they know they do work in their printers. I used to be one of these aftermarket guys, and I'm not saying that there aren't aftermarket inks that may very well work in some printers, but there is a reason for that. And especially when you're dealing with a commercial piece of equipment, you want that to work day in and day out, so that the company that my customers have created to deliver wall printing and now floor printing services can in fact do that on a daily basis. So anyway, we've grown. We have a business model that we provide exclusive territories. We're not a franchise. We don't reach into our customers' pockets for revenue. We're asking them to report their revenue. We do give them exclusive geographic territory based on population. that they can then acquire and grow themselves without us selling to anybody else. We support them and we support their growth. We have in the past 2 years achieved a growth of over 90 customers today that have their own exclusive territories and printers and are beginning to grow their own markets for wall and now floor printing services as well. If your audience does get the benefit of seeing some video, my employees were nice enough to give me an office with a window, so I had to wall paint one. So behind me is a typical example of a wall painting that's 5 feet by 8 feet in size. Has about $10 to $15 worth of ink in it. Takes about 2 hours to print that. It would take an artist about 2 days. But I don't mean for that to say that our machines will take the food off the table of muralists and graphics artists. And the exact opposite is true. In fact, all we do is faithfully reproduce any digital artwork onto any wall that's vertical. Doesn't even have to be smooth. This wall behind me in my warehouse is cinder block. You can see all the grout and everything else that's in there. It is an inkjet printer that will spray into crevices, so the wall doesn't have to be smooth. It just has to be vertical, and it doesn't have to be wall board or paper or canvas, although it can be. It can be metal, tile, glass, brick, any surface at all. It'll print on, indoors or outdoors. The inks will withstand the elements, bitter cold, hurricanes, hot sunlight that you experience in San Diego, Arizona, or we have here in Florida, Wilmington, North Carolina, where we're located. It'll withstand the elements up to 3 to 5 years outdoors, 12 to 15 years indoors in a nice climate controlled area. And I'll take a pause and let you ask me a new question.
Wow. There is so much to unpack there. I don't even know where to begin, but that was a good synopsis.
Yeah, quite the career there, Paul. You've really experienced it all with the various industries that you've been in.
I think
one of the things, Mike, that you mentioned to me early on before we actually went live here for your audience, the thread, the commonality from moment to moment or career to career, venture to venture. With me, I can very clearly identify the commonality of all that I've done, and it's all about the relationships. The relationships that I've forged. I said at the very beginning, I had a partner in my tennis shops. I had partners in my restaurant. I've had some partners good, some partners not so good. But at the same time, because you want to wear the hats you're best at, and you want somebody else to pick up the slack where you're not very good at, partnerships is a good thing. My current company employees, we've grown to about 15 employees now in the 2 years we've been in business. Everybody has a piece of the action. When we succeed, everybody succeeds. I believe in that very strongly, that everybody should have a stake in the game and want to take not only the risks that are associated with this by just coming to work in the morning, but also by dedicating themselves to our customer success. And so, again, the commonality is the relationships that I formed. Okay. I've had people that have helped me in the bad times through financial and moral support, and I've been there for people as well, friends, family, and just business relationships. And nothing can be more important, because I guess another trite phrase that I like using is be nice to the people on your way up, because they're the same people you're going to see on the way down. And so, I believe that very strongly.
Let's rewind the clock here, because you've been through so many interesting businesses, and I'm sure as you've stepped from one to the next, you probably learned a lot and took some of those learnings to the next business. So can you take us through let's start with the tennis retail shops. Like, what was the greatest learning you took from that business that you took to the restaurant business?
And I'd be curious about, I know you mentioned that you just have a love of the game, Paul, but what inspired you to actually start your own business? Were there entrepreneurs in your family, or is this just something that you saw a need and said, I'm setting out on my own and opening this?
Well, it's a great question. I'll answer the last part first. The exact opposite. My family would have been very, very happy if I was still a teacher, math high school teacher to this day. They believed in, not that they were civil service employees, they were not. My mother was a bookkeeper for a jewelry company. My father worked in advertising. for a large firm in New York City. But they believed in the security that pensions and government jobs and civil service might provide, and they were all for that, should that have been the path. Now, to directly answer the first part of your question, what started me in the sporting goods, as I mentioned, I strung tennis rackets for the school and made some money doing that. So I saw that there was a market for it. And there was a market for it because the town that I went to school had a very, very large tennis community. And so I expanded that, to the clothing, to the shoes, to the rackets, to the sale of those things. What I learned from that experience were the vendor relationships as well as the customer relationships that were formed. Being able to buy things at the fair price, at the best price. I learned about delivery. And you could fast forward from 1975, when I founded that first tennis shop in 1975, to today, talking about 47 years later, when I'm in this business, and now I'm dealing with supply chain issues and products coming out of China that I have to anticipate. I've got a wall on my board here. We're completely sold out for August, September, October, taking orders now for people who want a machine. They will get their machine in November, and trying to be realistic and honest with these people of when they're going to receive their machine to start their business. An 8-week lag in terms of getting something that's new is not necessarily a bad thing either. And so you learn how to, I hesitate to use the word spin situations, but a situation is what it is. It's going to be 8 to 10 weeks before somebody actually gets a machine in their hands that they put a deposit down for today. What it does, though, it gives them that time for something that's brand new, nobody knows about, to get their ducks in a row, establish their business, establish their marketing, do the same things we've done for the past 3 years, which was identify who your customers should be. So that's the kind of thread that started back in my restaurant, started in the sporting goods store and went through to the restaurant business. In between those two, there was a stint where I went to work as a traveling salesperson for a jewelry company, where I learned, I was in 5 cities in 5 days, doing a lot of traveling. That helped me understand a lot of different cultural differences between different areas, not only in this country, but outside our country, and dealing with people with regard to those cultural differences. I'm from New York. I talk fairly quick. That sometimes doesn't play well in some southern markets. It took me a week or so to learn from a neighbor when I lived in Atlanta for about 10 years, when he was telling me what he had for breakfast one morning. And he said, I had some toast and jam. And I had to ask him 3 times before he spelled jam, J-A-M. And I said, oh, you mean jam? And I said, well, where I'm from in New York, jam is not a 2-syllable word. And so you learn these things along the way, and then how to ingratiate yourself to people so that they may want to hear what you have to offer.
So Paul, just for some quick context, the sporting goods store, that was during your college years?
No, I started that during my teaching years. As soon as I graduated college, I became a high school math teacher.
Okay.
And you're correct though, Donovan. I didn't directly answer your question on the partnership level. I had a good friend of mine who I played tennis with. He was actually in the construction business. He was laid off of his job. He didn't know what he wanted to do. And I gave him that background that I've shared with you and your audience, that, I think there's a big market for tennis and for tennis rackets and stringing tennis rackets and maybe sneakers and clothing too. I said, if you're willing to work it, I'm willing to put in some of the money and ideas and do some work, but I'm teaching full time. Would you be interested in coming on board and being a partner in this? That's how the tennis shops actually began, with a partnership where one person was the active hands-on. I was kind of the counseling, business end of things.
Right.
And that carried through to other businesses. When I went into the restaurant business, my partner and I had sold that business plus some other business that I had in between. He was in the college bar business, but he had a really good concept of a full-scale restaurant. I had just finished the job traveling around, as I mentioned earlier, working for this jewelry company, doing sales and marketing and customer management. but I didn't like the traveling after 2 to 3 years. It was getting to me. And so I spoke to this friend and I said, do you always want to be in this college bar business or do you want to do something more? I had just finished years traveling around, entertaining customers. Anybody who goes out to a restaurant thinks they can be in the restaurant business. I was of that same mindset, but I was a little bit brighter than that and realized how much I didn't know about the business end of things just by being that patron on one side of the bar. And so I got together with my friend. We actually took a year off, the two of us. He sold out of his business. I sold out of my business. We pooled some money and then we took a year off, number one, to get to know one another, to see whether or not we could be in business together and extend the friendship to a business relationship. A lot of people say businesses and friends don't mix. The jury is out on that as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. I've had successes. I've had lesser successes. This one was a resounding success. And we spent a year learning about each other and going out to eat. We played tennis every morning for a year. We went out to a restaurant every afternoon or evening for a year to learn about different menus, different food concepts, what we wanted to do with that restaurant. And then we actually pulled the plug and jumped in and bought a building and created a menu and started a restaurant.
What's the name? What's the name of your restaurant? I'm sure people are curious.
Ward's Bridge Inn. It's in Montgomery, New York. It's still open today. I visited it about 2 years ago. Was happy to see the menu very similar to what we created.
That's impressive.
What type
many
of
restaurants last more than a year, let alone over 40 years.
That's 43 years. I'm extremely proud of that. And what I'm even more proud of is that down the street from Montgomery, New York, which is in Orange County, New York, if memory serves me right, that's the correct county. It's where Newburgh, New York is. And my chef, who was the chef at that restaurant, he actually moved with me to Florida, where I opened up another restaurant, where, as I mentioned earlier, that restaurant closed in 1 year. He helped me get that restaurant off the ground by being a chef. And then he came back to New York and he went first he went back to work for my ex-partner in a New York restaurant, Ward's Bridge Inn, but then he went out on his own, and his restaurant now, after about, I'd say, 25, 30 years maybe, is still open in Newburgh, New York. And his wife, who works with him in the restaurant, met at my restaurant in Florida. She was a waitress there. The two of them met. They moved back to New York. Now he owns his own restaurant, which is very successful. And I've traveled to see them and dine with them a couple of times over the years. And that probably makes me even prouder than my original restaurant that's open.
What did you call the Florida restaurant, and where was that located?
We called that restaurant Springfields. It was located in Delray Beach, Florida. And it was modeled after my restaurant in New York. But very honestly, I didn't market the research. I didn't do my research very well on the seasonal trade of Florida versus New York, which was pretty much 365 days a year. We were very successful. Much more seasonal in Florida. Sure. And I also had partners that had an agenda that was not aligned with my agenda. And they were actually very happy to see the restaurant close down.
When was it there? I frequent Delray every winter. I love Delray.
Well, Delray is a wonderful town. I built a nice house there on Lake Ida in the downtown area, which has just grown beautifully on Atlantic Avenue down there. The restaurant was on US 1, just south of Linton Boulevard. It is now a car dealership. It was a beautiful 2-story building that I built. After I exited that restaurant and closed it down, it became a Mexican restaurant for a year. And then that's a whole row of car dealerships. And one of the big car dealerships bought it, leveled the building, and made it into a parking lot. So, so again, not one of my proudest moments, but we got a 3-star review right out of the gate. It was a very beautiful building, a very nice menu and venture. Just circumstances didn't work out.
So what were the concepts for the restaurant, especially the one in New York? And what were a few of the signature dishes?
Well, the concept was eat what I like to eat. No, we went around, as I mentioned, for a year. We stole, another expression that I like to steal and use. Imitation is the best form of flattery. So we would go around to different restaurants, and when we found something we really found interesting, we might cajole the owner or the chef to give us a recipe here and there. But ultimately, the answer to your question is, we actually founded this restaurant because I was into the business end of things and the real estate part of it. And we found a building that was on the National Historic Registry in a very small farming town that had never seen anything more than typical diner food. and hamburger and bar pub kind of food.
Right.
We wanted a very upscale seafood steakhouse. That's what we wanted, with a really nice wine list. The town thought we were absolutely out of our minds to buy this building, which was a local joint, if you will, a local gin mill, so to speak. We gutted the building and renovated it and made it into a fairly upscale 75-seat restaurant, nice small boutique kind of restaurant, which over the years grew to a 150-seat restaurant. Plus, we bought adjoining property while I was there to create a bed and breakfast, which was actually a bed and dinner that we advertised in New York Magazine and attracted people who were visiting the Catskill Mountain region. It was 75 miles north of New York City. So it attracted that kind of a clientele as well. But it was between, I wasn't totally crazy. We did our homework on that one. It was between two populated areas economically, as well as population based, in Newburgh, New York and Middletown, New York, which were two populated areas, each of which was about 20 minutes from Montgomery, New York, where we founded the restaurant. That's where we marketed to. So all the people who saw us putting this restaurant up in Montgomery, the local people thought we were out of our minds. They never realized that we didn't care one bit whether anybody from Montgomery ever came to the restaurant or not. They turned out to be wonderful patrons and wonderful friends over the years. One of our partners was a Montgomery restaurant, a Montgomery resident, excuse me. But needless to say, we created a menu and a concept that nobody in that area had ever seen before, and it worked. They gravitated to that. This was their big night out. It wasn't an area where anybody was going to the movies or dancing or doing anything else at night. There was nothing to do there except go out to a restaurant. And so we were the show. And we had a piano bar there. We had a Billy Joel type singer who sang at the piano. People would come in. They would come in and sing with him. It just became a really, really wonderful experience for, I think, the communities that were there, as well as us and the patrons. So that was
sounds like a cool place.
Yeah, it still is. I don't think they have the piano bar and piano player anymore. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I can't recall. I went there for lunch last 2 years ago, but it still has a lot of what we put into it.
Let's now fast forward back to your wall printing business, because I think it's just such a novel, like, cool idea and makes so much sense. So
well, it didn't make so much sense when I got my first shipment of several $100,000 worth of machines in December of 2020, and then in December 2019, and then in January of 2020, we all know the world stopped with COVID, and here I was from a Chinese manufacturer. A lot of machines of a type that nobody's ever seen or heard about before, trying to create a business to put other people in business using these machines. So I wasn't necessarily the smartest kid on the block at the time, but I was committed. Even though my wife said I should have been committed, I was committed to the job at hand. And whereas other people were laying off people in 2020 and working remotely, I took advantage of those two situations by hiring people and also identifying who those customers would be. And it turned out that a lot of people who were working remotely or virtually or being laid off were rethinking their own career paths and rethinking their own lives and saying, do I really want to work for this company or do what I'm doing now? Or maybe there's another path where maybe I can have more ownership of more control of my future. And maybe this is the time I should consider having a business. And so the timing turned out to be right. It took about 8 months, of course, to get through that COVID, the really hard COVID period of 2020, before people actually traveled to Wilmington to see what we were talking about or becoming really interested from our marketing through Zoom calls and such to learn about the business, where we actually started selling territories and machines. But from the middle end of 2020 through 2021 and now 2022, so we're about 2 years in business, and we're selling about 1 to 2 new territories and machines every single week now.
So just to clarify, you're a distributor of this equipment. Your 90 customers, they are the ones that are actually going out to retail or office buildings and doing the printing.
Correct.
And they all own territories.
Unlike that original person who approached me, who owned the German printer, that's one of our competitors today, if you want to call them that. We don't see ourselves as having any competitors really, because we are still the only company that has a presence here in the United States to provide training, support, materials, ink, supplies to our customers to keep them working day in and day out. But to answer your point, these customers, we don't provide the services.
Sure.
As opposed to this other company in Canada, we provide and support only the machines to make our customers successful. So they are the ones who go after residences, commercial enterprises, restaurants rather, schools, hospitals, medical offices. They decide what their customer market is going to be. They could be focused on very laser focused on just residential customers, just apartments, just restaurants, just medical offices, schools, or they could be very generalist. We want them to grow. We want them to buy more printers over time, which is their obligation, hire more people, become a successful business to gain equity in the territory they own exclusively. And that's our business model.
Are there limitations if I have, let's say I have an enormous hospital with a tremendous wall, are there limitations on the size that this can print on?
Absolutely not.
Unlimited.
There is no limit to this. There's this limit to the size the machine can print itself. And that's limited to about 8.5 to 9 feet of image print height. And that's using an extension rail that comes with our machines of about 1 meter in length. The standard machine is designed to fit inside of an 8-foot room with a standard room height.
Okay.
And it's limited only by ceilings or walls that may exist in interior painting. Outdoors, there may not be such limitations, or in gymnasiums or large event spaces, there may not be limitations. And so you can think of a skyscraper and a window washer. That window washer erects scaffolding and goes up to each floor and lifts himself up and washes the windows on each floor. Our printer mimics that model by you can take our printer and put it on a scaffold and go up, because the technology that is included with our printers, which we call image stitching, where one image ends, another image can be layered on top of it seamlessly, so that overall you can have a 50-foot tall digital print look absolutely beautiful because you've stitched together smaller images.
For folks that are going to be out looking for your customers to get some printing done on their brick and mortar, can you give us just like an entry level price of, if I had like in your office, like what would that?
Sure. So
picture?
While again, we're not a franchise, we don't dictate what our customers charge.
Sure.
And the price really is all over the map because first of all, from a pricing perspective, I don't like nickel and diming people. And what I mean by that is when I quote a job for somebody, for that end user you've now asked about, I don't like saying, well, we got our travel costs, we got our ink costs, we got our labor costs. We got scaffolding costs, whatever. We have to prime the wall first because your wall is dirty and doesn't look good. We have to clean it first, or if it's glass, we have to wipe it down first, make sure it's free of dust and it's dry. So all those things and suggest that they wrap into a per square foot price once they've done their homework and site surveyed where that print is going to be. And sometimes there's also opportunities for them to make more money with graphics design by either hiring somebody or partnering with somebody if they don't have those skill sets themselves. When somebody comes to them with an idea, oh, I want a nice mountain scene, or I want this beautiful scene of a window opening in a pond behind me because I don't have a window in my office. So, make me something that looks like I've got the outside in here. Right. And so when somebody comes with that, we do include a library of images, and there are plenty of online resources like shutterstock.com and other places where you can download the kinds of quality images that will enlarge to any size. But now getting around to the answer to your question, generally we say don't charge less than $20 a square foot. Meaning that an image like this, that's 5 feet by 8 feet, 40 square feet, is going to cost somebody about $800 for that. So $800 for that would take an artist 2 days to print that at maybe $75 an hour for their time to print something like that. And not that they're not worth it, but just our printers will take any digital image so that the artist who created that image now can sit back, create more images, and allow the machine to faithfully reproduce their artwork on a wall, any wall, quickly. And so cool. There's about $15 worth of ink in that. The machine's printed about 15 to 20 square feet per hour. So this particular image which has a lot of white in it, which is not printed at all because it's a white background. One of the unique features of our printers that the German printer does not offer, and in fact, no other printer in the world offers except ours, it's one of our patents, is we can actually print with white ink. And so if that was a black wall or a green wall, this image would look exactly like this because these windows and the window frame would all be printed with white ink. But because it's a white primered background wall, our printers know not to print anything where there's white. And so it saves on ink, saves on time. And so this has about, ink costs anywhere from 25 to 45 cents a square foot. So 40 square feet at 25 cents a square foot is about $10 to $15 worth of ink.
Nothing.
And so 2 hours to print it. Let's say you put somebody on that printer for $20 an hour. Let's say it took you an hour to get there to wherever this person's business or home is. An hour to set up and everything else to get yourself ready to go. Let's go crazy and say 5 hours to get this job done. At $20 an hour, it's $100, $10 of ink cost, $110. We actually like to double that. And because we encourage all of our customers to practice printing first to make sure it's going to come out on a piece of paper or something so your customer's happy. So take that $115, double it, let's call it $250 all in to do this print, and you get $800 back. That's the typical ROI on a wall print.
And for our listeners that are not watching this on YouTube and are listening on one of our podcast networks,
please accept my apologies.
Yeah. The image that we're looking at behind Paul on his wall, I at first thought was a Zoom background. I mean, it looks, I couldn't tell. I first thought it was Zoom, and then I thought maybe he's like in the mountains on a lake. It looks legitimate. It looks real as anything else in his room.
Yeah, truth be told, the way we promote the product, the end product to our customers, it's near photo quality. If you come up to this, I mean, after all, you're printing on a cinder block wall that absorbs. It would be different maybe if you're printing on a nicely primed piece of wallboard, sheetrock, which gives you maybe more of a photo quality reproduction. But still, we say near photo quality. You might not be able to see the eyes on the seagulls that are flying in the background here. But if you were in my office, you'd be able to make out that these are Phillips screws, but it wouldn't be crystal clear like an image that's on your computer. And we try to tell people this is not a vinyl sticker or a photo reproduction like you see on your computer. This is wall art. It's designed to be looked at in passing. But with that said, you can have very fine text printed with this. We have museums who use our wall printers to do the product descriptions for a sculpture or a piece of artwork on the wall in a museum. So you can get very fine text to print with our printers. But for artwork, we always call it near photo quality.
Yeah, I mean, this seems perfect for residential settings for almost a newfangled wallpaper replacement. And I mean, I'm even thinking for like young kids' bedrooms. Oh yeah. Putting up.
Let me stop you right there for one quick second, Donovan. And just again, I always like to be honest and set expectations appropriately. So we tell people right off the bat, don't think of this as replacement for wallpaper or vinyl sticker, in that it does not go edge to edge, floor to ceiling like those other things do. Okay. Now, vinyl, of course, is a toxic material. You can't even use vinyl outdoors. You can't use vinyl in hospitals or schools. It's frowned upon. So that's where wall printing would exceed expectations in those regards. But it is designed to be wall art. This print right here that you see, if I had the wall, which doesn't intersect right at this print, but the wall does appear, for people looking, it appears right there about 3 feet away from the edge of that print. And so if I wanted to, I could extend this print or make a larger print that would go to about a foot to the adjoining wall. It's not designed to go edge to edge. And you need about 12 inches top and bottom if you have a ceiling obstruction that's interfering with it. So we don't promote it as a replacement for painting a wall or wallpaper. It is designed, or something repetitive like wallpaper might be. It is designed to be artwork. Any digital image, we ask for a vector image. Now, to your point though, if somebody had a picture of their family or a picture of their dog, as I have done personally, and blown it up to like 4 feet by 6 feet or something, and put that on a wall. You might be able to do that with one of the real high quality cameras that you take a picture of, but JPEGs are not designed to enlarge like vector images.
Sure.
Again, I don't want to get into the technical aspects for your audience, but a vector image is a digitally created image. It will enlarge to any size and look beautiful and not lose quality. A JPEG, on the other hand, may look beautiful on your phone or on your computer when you send it to somebody or share it with somebody. But if you try to blow that up to 4 feet by 6 feet, it might look like garbage. And so that's where an artist comes in, a graphics artist, to maybe fix that picture up. So when somebody comes to you with their picture of their dog or their family and saying, we want to put that on the den in our living room, yes, you might be able to, or you may have to enhance it graphically to make it look the way the customer wants. But
Sure.
our printers, once given a vector image, will print it beautifully.
And
How
then
many
go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. I was going to ask a silly question. How many walls of your house have your artwork, your wall printing artwork on it?
Actually, I've got a new house. We have not put anything on the walls, but I have lots of paper and canvas wall prints around the house.
Okay.
So you can in fact take something and put it on canvas and make a picture out of it, and frame it. We actually have pictures of frames around pictures, and put it on canvas. It almost looks 3D, like a picture on a wall. But it's because the quality is that good with the printers. But I have not gone printer to wall yet in my own.
I'm sure your wife will have something to say about that.
Yeah, she will, and she's actually been encouraging me to do something. But right now, I'm too busy with our wall printers, practice printing here for customers.
It sounds like it.
So for your customers, are you actually selling the printers to them, or are they licensing the printers from you?
We sell them.
Okay.
We sell the printers, and then we support them with all supplies, parts, training, support, everything they need to be successful.
And do you find the individuals or groups who are purchasing the 90 you've purchased printers thus far, are they mainly individuals just trying to get into something new? Are they like mom and pop printing shops trying to add a new service offering? Kind of what is the target profile or customer profile that you mainly sell to?
So Donovan, great question. And when you say target profile, our target profile is anybody with a pulse. So I don't really care what their motivation is, but to directly answer your question, it really does fall into two basic buckets. You have the startup, the entrepreneur, the father, grandfather whose kid is coming out of high school or college. Maybe they have some artistic bent and leanings that they've had, but they don't know what to do with it, or they don't want to go work for somebody, or the parent or grandparent doesn't mind investing $25,000, $30,000, which is the cost of our printers, same as a small car, let's say, that they don't mind investing in that to put their kid in business and maybe transferring or supporting them with some of their experience on the business side, but nurturing those skills to create some kind of a business entity and equity for their child. So that's one bucket that people fall into. The others are those people, as I described earlier, that are looking for a new path in their lives, maybe want to start a business, but they've got a foot in the door of their old life and maybe a foot in the door of this new life of being an entrepreneur. And so they're doing this as a side hustle. Both of those paths are the least successful out of the box because they're not doing it often enough to gain enough revenue to really maximize the potential for this business. The other 50% are people who have this as maybe they're already painters, construction workers, general contractors, home remodelers, people in interior design, architects, people who get it, hire people to use the printers and do this full time and leverage their existing customer base, or go after new customers in schools, hospitals, residences, businesses, restaurants, and are out there printing full time. Those are the most successful. And they've basically today, they've fallen into those two areas. People who are starting up, just using this as either a side hustle or an entrepreneurial venture with no background experience, or people who have an existing business and are using this to add revenue to it.
Interesting. So, Paul, with the wall printer, What have you learned from this experience that you had not come by previously in all of your other ventures in your career? Obviously, in life, experiences build on each other. So, wondering what through this 4 year process that has gone into starting the business, what have you learned from this specific business?
Well, first and foremost, I love it. It is something that I genuinely enjoy the results that it provides for not only our customers, but for their customers. That give pleasure to people who see the results of what these machines can do. I've always liked innovation. It's one of the reasons I got into many of those other things that I described earlier, from the innovative baby bottle that was manufactured in Australia to the headband headphone device that was manufactured in China to the self-service dog wash that I got into because I was a dog person searching for things to how to wash my dog. And I found this that was not here in the United States. So first and foremost, the innovation really captured me back then in 2019, 2018, when I first learned of this technology. And continues to captivate me every day when I see these printers in action. It's one of the reasons we take our customer's brand, and one of the reasons I did not want to be a franchise. I want people to create their own entity, their own name, their own brand. We put it on the printers for them with their own contact information and website and email address and phone number, because when these printers are out there in the streets working, people look at them and they go, wow, that's pretty cool. And then they come away with either, I've got a wall I could see a wall print on, or that looks like a pretty cool business. I'd like to be in that business too. Either way, me or my customers who own that territory become winners in this journey. And in this venture or adventure we're taking. But it also, it involves a lot of risk. It's something new. I'm blessed with a great team that's not only supporting our customers, but in the social media aspects are identifying new customers every day. But still, with about 5 million impressions that we've accomplished over the 3 years we've been in business through YouTube and social and other social media channels like Facebook and Instagram and Reddit and Pinterest and whatever, we've managed to capture the imagination of people enough to come and want to know more about this. Some small subset of which have become those 90 customers. A much larger group of those 5 million people are people who now are aware that such a technology exists and maybe are telling somebody else about it, or maybe are waiting for a wall printer to come into their neighborhoods so that they can actually get a wall printing done. But all of this is only the tip of the iceberg. After all, the US itself has 300 million people. So making 5 million people aware of this today and having 90 people doing this in business is nothing when you look at the fact that there's 25,000 7-Elevens and McDonald's out there and other kinds of companies that are servicing their local markets. That's the only commonality between me and those franchise analogies, is that there's a lot of territory to be serviced when you have something that people want and when it solves a problem for people. And so we're at the very early stages of doing this. And so what gets me up in the morning is knowing that there's another 1,000 to come after the 90 I've got today, and trying to find out just who those people are going to be and what they're going to do with our printers. We're learning a lot every day too from our customers. We've had one in Naples, Florida, who had a customer in Sarasota, Florida, with a big expensive mansion, who wanted to have 2 rooms like the Sistine Chapel have ceiling prints on them. So he saw the wall printing and he said, I want ceiling prints. Can you do that? Well, the customer, our customer, the wall printer, said, because they were creative, they said, sure, we could do that. And what they did is they hired a general contractor to take 2 8-foot by 8-foot pieces of wood, put it up against the wall, took the image that the customer wanted on the ceiling, wall painted it, and then that general contractor rented a forklift and scaffolding, put it into the ceiling, surrounded that with the customer's crown molding. Again, this is hard to describe, but easy to see in a video, which is available on our website. And again, that's something we never thought of before. We have other customers who never take their wall printer out of their workshops or out of their garages or homes or offices, because they're printing on pieces like sheet metal or canvas and selling those on Etsy and other venues and making a good living doing that. So these are things we never envisioned for the printer that really just come from our customers, and more power to them.
Paul, I feel like we could stay on and talk to you all day. And I would love to continue this conversation, but you sound like a very busy guy. And out of respect for your time, I think we better wrap it up. Before we do, any final thoughts, feelings, nuggets of wisdom, comments that you'd like to share?
I appreciate that you gave me the opportunity to talk about the wall printer. When I talk to audiences such as yours, I never want it to be a sales kind of thing, and by no means was this. It may have come across in points like that. But there's a lot to know about the wall printer as a business, and if people are interested in that, they can certainly go to thewallprinter.com and learn more about it. But I'm also happy to talk to people about their journeys. I sit on the advisory board of the Cameron Business School at the University of North Carolina. I'm in a mentorship program with many other people that also wear other hats, like the finance and legal and sales, marketing, and other resources that any business needs to grow. And I'm happy to share with them if they want to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can search for Paul Barron. I'm sure you'll find me. And if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, again, not an advertisement for LinkedIn, but it is a very good professional network if it's used in that regard. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who has some problem, something on their path that they'd like to chat about. I really enjoy that. It's why I surround myself with a lot of under 40s in my own business, because they give me the energy and the insights that I don't have really perspective on. So this gives me a great deal of pleasure too. So people are welcome to reach out and connect with me.
Well, you're a good man. I appreciate that you give back and help others. That's very nice of you and admirable. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I think it was a really insightful conversation. I'm sure our listeners will get a lot out of this.
I appreciated the time as well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Take care.
Everybody got a dream, let me show you all love. From an idea, working it into a startup. This the show that you need, what more could you ask for? Never know who become the CEO next door. Tune in, every episode insightful. The type of vibe you will want to subscribe to. Let's go. Hey.